Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the Georgia Recovers February webinar titled Recovery at Work, Strategies to Support the Post-Treatment to Employment Continuum. Okay, so kicking us off, we're going to start off with the welcome and housekeeping. We're going to overview the Georgia Recovers campaign. I will introduce our speakers, and then they will present. And we'll wrap up with our Q&A portion. So starting off with housekeeping, this webinar will be recorded and a copy of the presentation will be available on the Georgia Recovers website. All attendees will be muted throughout the duration of the webinar. Please use the Q&A panel on the bottom of your screen to ask any questions. The chat is also available for general commentary, but it won't be moderated as closely. The interpreter, Sarita, will remain spotlighted throughout the webinar. So to adjust your view and see all speakers or panelists, click view in the top right corner of your screen, and then select speaker or gallery. Users can also select a side-by-side view, and feel free to use the stream text link to access the live transcription for the webinar, which Ashley will also place in the Zoom chat. Next, we have our Georgia Recovers campaign overview. So Georgia Recovers is an evidence-based public health campaign aimed to reduce prejudice and discrimination that is associated with substance use disorder in Georgia. This campaign is brought to you by DBHDD and builds off of the pivotal work of Georgia Council for Recovery. So we have a few goals and objectives, including increasing knowledge about substance use disorder and that recovery is not only possible, but probable. We seek to improve attitudes towards those living with and/or in recovery from substance use disorder and strengthen the capacity of stakeholders, including organizations and individuals that are already responding to the crisis. So we have 3 pillars of work: community connection, story sharing, and education. So starting off with community connection, Georgia Recovers connects with different community organizations across the state, as well as our Community Impact Committee, which guides the direction of the campaign. Story sharing is a pivotal part of the Georgia Recovers campaign. So we collect stories of recovery and allyship, and then share these stories across our social media platforms, as well as our website. And then last but not least, education. So the campaign is changing attitudes by promoting messaging that speaks to hope and recovery. And we also host these monthly webinars that shed light on topics related to substance use disorder. Feel free to connect with Georgia Recovers on our social media platforms, so Instagram and Facebook. Specifically with Instagram, we are trying to reach 450 followers, so please head over there at GA Recovers to give us a follow and interact with our content. In order to become an official campaign partner, please complete the partner form, which Ashley will place in the chat as well. So next we have our introduction for our first speaker. So Lauren Wood is a program manager at the Appalachian Regional Commission, an economic development partnership agency of the federal government and 13 state governments across the Appalachian region. In this role, Lauren oversees all of ARC's health portfolio, as well as their Inspire SUD Recovery to Work initiative. So give me a second and I will pass it over to you, Lauren. All right, we should be good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Jayla. Let me see if I can move through. Awesome, this works. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you today. As Jayla had mentioned, my name is Lauren Wood. I'm a health program manager at the Appalachian Regional Commission. For folks that are not aware of kind of who and what ARC or Appalachian Regional Commission is, we are truly a federal state partnership. There is not one grant that ARC has funded since our inception in 1965 that we do not get full sign off from all of our state partners, state program managers, and our governor's alternates on. Unlike pretty much all other federal agencies, we work very closely day in and day out on project development, again, grant approval, and really understanding community needs and strengths and barriers. We work very closely with our states and communities. And with that, it is my pleasure to be here to talk to you about a substance use disorder Inspire Recovery to Work funding initiative that ARC started a number of years ago. So back in 2019, ARC hosted a number of listening sessions across all of our regions. So again, 13 states and 423 counties to really understand what its challenges and most importantly, its assets were in moving the needle to not just reduce substance use, but most importantly, improve workforce engagement and long-term meaningful workforce engagement for those in recovery. So out of these sessions, the Inspire initiative was born. At present, Inspire makes up to, and not sure what happened there. Let's go back. At present, Inspire makes up to $13 million available for all of our Appalachian communities that are really either looking to and/or are currently addressing their SUD challenges right through this funding to create or expand their recovery ecosystem. And I'm going to say recovery ecosystem a number of times, but our friend and colleague Brendan Buff is going to describe a little bit more to you on what we're doing or what we mean by the recovery ecosystem space. But what you can see here is the visual on the right really, I think, helps to demonstrate how ARC initially has defined this ecosystem, right, and the necessary partnerships that it takes to properly create that ecosystem while also addressing your SUD challenges across the continuum of care. This visual has really been a labor of love over the last few years as it's been an iterative feedback to build it and improve that visual based on our grantee feedback. One thing to keep in mind through all Inspire projects or their scopes of work, so what we fund through Inspire, all of those projects must tie back in some way to workforce engagement or re-engagement for individuals in recovery. So at a high level, those project investments in the scope of work, right, may include those investments in your healthcare networks, partnerships that support those in recovery, as well as health or general behavioral health workforce pipelines. We also fund projects that are really designed to coordinate or link your SUD recovery services, as well as education, employment training, apprenticeships, and things of that nature. We're increasingly funding projects that are creating social enterprises. So those social enterprises not just support the workforce engagement for the recovery community, but also financial sustainability for the organization. And also something I'll get to in my final slide is we're increasingly funding projects that really foster or support that employer engagement in the recovery-friendly workplace space. So I usually like to give just a kind of a high level of where Inspire funds or where Inspire finds itself when it comes to our funding and our impact to date. So since April of 2021, when we released our first round of funding, we so far have invested just shy of $43 million to 127 projects across 349 out of our 423 counties. So what this really demonstrates is that in less than 3 years, Inspire funding is being used across almost 80% of the ARC region. This shows ARC and Congress, who we obviously get all of our funding for at the Appalachian Regional Commission. But what this shows is that Inspire funding is definitely needed. Most importantly, it's valued. And that in a very unique way, it's bridging a gap in our communities. It's helping employers meet a lot of those workforce demands. I'm sure as many of you see when you walk in, your local communities, there's help wanted signs everywhere. Inspire is helping to address that in many of our Appalachian communities. It's helping those large and small businesses, and most importantly too, it's leveraging private investments as matching funds are required for not just Inspire projects, but also all of ARC's projects that are funded. So I'm not going to get into all of these, but because I'll say, if you can, scan the QR code that is not on this slide, because I normally have one and forgot it here. So there is a QR code in later slides here. But all of the timelines that you see in front of you are located on the first page of the notice of solicitation of applications. And let me just quickly put in a link into the chat box for the Inspire website where you can find that NOSA. But a couple of things to keep in mind since I'm presenting on this past the deadline of when letters of intent were due last Friday. For anyone that is interested in submitting a final application for FY24 by the deadline of March 8th by 5 p.m. Eastern Time, it is really required that you reach out to your Appalachian Regional Commission State Program Manager. Her name is Annika Woodruff, to get her approval and sign off and feedback on a potential project. So let me put in a link as well to how you can get in touch with Annika. Her phone number and email address is in that link that I just provided. So let me quickly dive in just to give you a more of a deep dive here into Inspire funding pathways. So there are implementation grants, so two different pathways, as you can see, implementation and planning. Implementation grants, those are a max of $500,000 for up to 3 years. So that's $500,000 across an entire project life cycle. But these are really designed for folks who, as at ARC, we say are shovel ready, or folks, right, that have projects or programs that are already in place. So if you have an SUD project that's providing wraparound supports, and maybe you want to start to provide more workforce, vocational or educational opportunities, an implementation grant might be best for you. Whereas with the planning grants, these are really designed more for communities or entities who know that they have an SUD challenge, but they need some funding to really help them understand what those challenges and assets are in their community, with the hope that after their planning grant findings, they can use this information to create a project or a program right in your community to address it. So historically, we've seen folks come in for planning grants, and in their scope of work, they're focusing on community needs assessment, a SWOT analysis, maybe even a strategic plan or kind of other similar research-based activities, again, to help you understand what are your needs, strengths, and assets in the community to eventually create a project or a program. And then regarding the Inspire priorities, all of these that you see in front of you, and there's that handy dandy QR code that'll take you right to the NOSA. These are all located on page 5 of the NOSA. So it's always necessary for me when I'm talking about Inspire to discuss these because these priorities really ensure a successful application. So all proposals should in some way, shape, or form tell ARC and myself as one of the reviewers how you're looking to build, expand, or improve your recovery ecosystem, right? So we're looking in the context of these priorities in your final proposal, we're looking for you to address how you can, with Inspire funds, create or expand a recovery-friendly workplace, improve the coordination of service delivery for those in recovery, create training, again, certification pipelines or apprenticeships that lead to meaningful employment. We're also looking for you to describe to us, how you're facilitating or really building out very strong cross-sector partnerships. And lastly, how you're building capacity and, to the extent it's appropriate, financial security in your organization. And then I do usually like to, because there's a ton going on in the recovery to work, the ecosystem building space, and the recovery-friendly workplace space. So I like to really show a kind of a bird's eye view of the diversity and the uniqueness of who our grantees are, and then how they're building their ecosystems, right, creating those recovery-friendly workplaces. So I'm not going to go into all of these because I don't have time, but happy to discuss more maybe during the Q&A. But as a kind of a couple examples here, so you've got Brooks House, which is over in Hagerstown, Maryland. They're recovery-friendly or women's recovery housing facility. They formed a partnership with a company called Manitowoc. They're a nationwide construction company. And through that partnership, they're offering welding education and training courses to those women that are in the program. And once they finish up the training and education, those women are coming out making $100,000 a year as a welder, which is pretty neat. In Kentucky, we've got Pikes County Health Department. They're providing life skills, education, workforce training to men that are currently incarcerated, with wraparound supports provided to those men after release, and then a lot of hand-holding to find the right employers to engage in that long-term meaningful employment. And the last one I'll mention here is in South Carolina. We have the State Office of Rural Health. They're really focused on being a connector for their rural communities in South Carolina by linking individuals in recovery to those job resources, recovery-friendly employers, but they're also developing, again, the apprenticeship pipelines as well as a stigma reduction campaign, all with ARC funds, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot more going on, even just on this slide and beyond. Happy to answer any questions as folks have them in the Q&A. But as I start to wrap up here, I would be remiss if I did not mention how much is actually nationally, not just within the Appalachian region of 13 states and 423 counties, how much is unfolding and how much momentum there's going on in the recovery-friendly workplace space. So as a bit of background here and kind of future thinking, so for FY24 and FY25, the White House National Drug Control and Strategy, this is essentially, that strategy is like the guiding document nationally that plans for drug spending activities across our country. But that strategy outlines a goal of advancing recovery, a recovery-ready nation. And specifically in advancing a recovery-ready nation, it's through the lens of recovery-friendly workplaces. And I'd say, which maybe some of you are already well aware of in your communities, is that there is a ton of organizations and employers across the country that are increasingly supporting the recovery-friendly workplace model, and most importantly, instituting a lot of funding, policy, and advocacy to support that momentum and build on the growth. And so out of the FY24, that strategy I mentioned, ONDCP, which is the Office of National Drug Control and Policy, has been working with a ton of federal agencies across the country to really understand, what are effective policies and kind of what does this recovery-friendly workplace landscape look like. Since all of that momentum from ONDCP, the Global Recovery Initiative Foundation has taken over the federal investment in the model. And going forward in FY24 and beyond, they're going to be assisting state officials such as governors, attorney generals, secretaries, and folks kind of that caliber in all of our states. But they're going to be assisting them in establishing statewide recovery-friendly workplace programs through certification and accreditation and technical assistance. So I know that was a lot of really random information in a very short amount of time. But there is so much more that can be discussed. So again, for folks that are interested in learning more about what's happening nationally, as well as how you can, tap into ARC funds, Inspire funds, and hear more about the great work that's going on in Appalachia, please feel free to email or call me. I'm always available. And with that, I might have gone over a minute or two, so I apologize. I'm going to turn it back over to our friends at Shatterproof, who are going to introduce a great partner and friend in this ecosystem work, which is Brendan Buff. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing all of the resources that you did in the chat. So I am going to introduce our next speaker, Brendan Buff. Give me 1 second. Okay, perfect. So Brendan Buff serves as the Director of Rural Development at the Center for Regional Economic Competitiveness, managing the operations of the Development District Association of Appalachia, and leading an Appalachian Regional Commission funded project with DDAA, building a recovery to work ecosystem. This effort seeks to support the regional development of recovery to work ecosystems in Appalachia that supports workers and businesses through the process of recovery from substance use disorder. So I'll pass it over to you, Brendan.
Thank you so much, Jayla and Lauren, for a great presentation and a warm welcome. So again, let's see if I can move this slide ahead. Again, I'm Brendan Buff, Director of Rural Development at CREC. We manage the Development District Association of Appalachia. A development district, a local development district, are basically multi-jurisdictional planning and development organizations, economic development organizations that serve local governments throughout Appalachia. There's a kind of corollary working with the Economic Development Administration. These are kind of national type organizations, but the ones we work with are focused in Appalachia. And we work closely with ARC. CREC, my employer, we come at this issue from the perspective of economic development originally. And so this SUD space and treatment and recovery was relatively foreign to us when we first began working in this area about 5 or 6 years ago. And we've learned a lot, and we want to share a bit with you about the kind of learnings and tools that have come out of that process. So a bit of background. ARC has been working on this issue for quite a while now, concerned about what was, originally started as the opioid epidemic and then kind of expanded out into SUD. They had worked with NORC at the University of Chicago to create an overdose mapping tool. They had a substance abuse advisory council trying to figure out what's going on in Appalachia with this issue and what is the role of an economic development organization in addressing this. And they came up with this idea of a recovery to work ecosystem. And what is the role, and trying to find the role of a local development district that, these organizations that partner very closely with ARC. So we came up with the idea of doing a cohort learning academy. It's basically a process of taking a group of regional partners led by a local development district and helping them define for themselves, what does a recovery to work ecosystem mean to them? Who are the key partners? What are the goals that they want to achieve in helping coordinate all of your regional partners to help people move from treatment into recovery, and recognizing that, as Lauren showed, there are a lot of key components. We identified 3 goals of a recovery to work ecosystem. One is organizing regional stakeholders to create a continuum of care. One is engaging and supporting businesses as partners in this process. And then also facilitating wraparound support for the workers themselves. And that encompasses a lot of different governmental and non-governmental organizations within the community, from housing and transportation, childcare, getting to your job and keeping your job and doing all the things that you need in your life to be a successful employee. Recognize that this recovery to work concept and process is new to folks. So we want to try to distill the concept a little bit and think about the kind of challenges that you're facing and how what we've learned might be able to help you. Issues like partnership building, regional coordination, engaging employers, better providing support services, building sustainability for your projects. We learned a lot through the Cohort Learning Academy, through working with these regions about the challenges that folks face and the priorities that people find as they're trying to work through these issues. And we created a recovery to work ecosystem builder's guide. It's a living document where we continue to update it all the time and try to add useful resources. And we received kind of lived experience, feedback from leaders on the ground about what they're interested in, what their challenges are, what they need to be successful in setting up recovery to work ecosystems. And we worked hard to try to avoid duplicating similar resources. This is a growing space, it's a new space. As you can see from Lauren's presentation, there are a lot of different organizations that are kind of coming to the fore and trying to provide useful information. That recovery ready workplace initiative is aligned with a lot of the things that are in our guide, but maybe a bit different, because what we're trying to do through this work is to build community capacity. And so it's not just about focusing on kind of driving folks into a specific employer and making that employer an individual employer successful, but about making your community work better and making your community coordinated and helping your people in treatment be successful at their places of work. And fundamentally, again, it's really about understanding for yourself what is a recovery to work ecosystem. Lauren shared this diagram before, but I think it's really important to take a closer look at all of the different types of organizations that play into a recovery to work ecosystem. You've got the justice system. Of course, you've got employers, you've got the public health system and treatment, nonprofits and human services. But importantly, folks like workforce development and training and working with businesses. There's not one organization that necessarily needs to be the entryway into setting up this effort. We tend to focus on the local development districts because they have a lot of great resources in your community. If you're not familiar with the local development district, I can drop a link in the chat about what exactly those are, because they're a great resource in your community. They can help you with potentially an Inspire grant. They manage grants on behalf of local governments and have a great relationship with the Appalachian Regional Commission, and are really well connected within their communities. But that said, leading a recovery to work ecosystem can come from basically anybody that's interested in bringing folks in their community together. We came up with a 5-step process in this builder's guide, starting out with finding the right partners, creating a vision for what you're trying to accomplish, identifying a leadership team that can begin setting a shared vision of success, then getting organized, convening your partners, deciding on what it actually means to work together in your community. Of course, connecting people to jobs, engaging employers, connecting people to training, and really focusing on the kind of workforce development and employer engagement. Then keeping people in jobs. So what does it mean to actually identify the gaps in your region, improve the connections among the service providers in your community so there are clean handoffs, that there aren't folks slipping through the cracks, that everybody's getting the resources that they need to be successful. And finally, thinking about sustainability, identifying opportunities for new project development, or expanding out the projects that you currently have, connecting into communities of practice that have peers that are working through similar issues, and really begin to think of this as a really solid concept. That's something that you can look to your peers in other states and learn from, and maybe serve as an example to others. So the guide, and I'm going to share it in a minute, but it's got a lot of different, I think, really helpful features to it that will help you as you try to set up your own recovery to work ecosystem. It's got case studies of regions that have done similar work and community spotlights. It's got activities that you can work through with your partners or on your own to help think a bit more carefully about what you need to do and how you want to do it. It's got templates for things like setting up meetings or reaching out to employers. And it's got other resources, from a variety of partners that we've kind of found along the way. A few things we've learned along the way that have really informed, I think, this builder's guide, and some things you want to think about as you're going through it. First is that every region is unique, and you're going to have different starting points. Some of you might already be really well acquainted with the idea of a recovery to work ecosystem. And you've already got meetings set up and you're doing a lot of great things. You've got funding for what you're doing. Some of you have never heard of this concept before. Still maybe don't really have a great idea of what I'm talking about. And you're kind of ready to poke around, but that's all okay. There are different places you can start. If you're already feeling pretty good about who you're working with, you can go straight to phase 3 and say, okay, I just want to figure out some interesting ways of reaching out to employers, or ways to coordinate our resources and those types of things. We wanted to make sure that we had the recovery perspective integrated throughout this process, and I'd recommend you do as well. Right from the beginning of the partners that you're reaching out to and how you're engaging employers. Think about what it is, what it feels like for a person in recovery, what resources that they're going to need along the way, and how their lived experience can really inform what their needs are and how your community can serve them. And then importantly, ground your work in employer input. They're going to have their own perspectives on the risk involved in hiring a person in recovery. Sometimes those risks are unfounded, and that requires some education and working through stigma. Obviously, Shattered Proof is a great partner in helping address those types of issues. Oftentimes, though, there are valid concerns that you need to work through with employers in your community to show them that people in recovery have great resources that will make them a reliable employee, that you're doing a lot of things to share resources in things like HR management and so on and so forth, to make an employer feel confident that they're prepared to hire and retain people in recovery. So again, the Builder's Guide is an interactive toolkit. Community practitioners like you can coordinate regional stakeholders, engage employers, and there are all kinds of templates and useful things in it. So I want to just quickly go to the website and show you what this actually looks like, and what a resource in there looks like. So Jayla, if you wouldn't mind going to that browser tab.
Working on it.
Okay, thank you. So if you could just scroll to the top really quickly. So this is the first phase of the Recovery to Work Ecosystem Builder's Guide. When you first arrive on the website, there's a landing page. Drop this, and you might have seen that if Laura dropped that in the chat for us. You scroll down and it kind of works you through each phase of the guide, gives you a bit of context and orientation about what we're talking about, starting out with what is a recovery to work ecosystem. Then talking about what are the outcomes, what are the goals that you have when you are going through this phase. And then we get into some resources and some more detail about the specific aspects of this phase. We share things like ARC's recovery to work diagram that I shared a few slides prior. And if you go down a little bit further, we talk a little bit about things like setting your organization's vision. So this activity right here, identifying the key aspects of recovery to work ecosystem from your organization's point of view. So that's an activity that you can work with. And on the next browser tab, Jayla, we actually created a little exercise for you to work through. So on this, it's basically, go to the first slide on here. It's an ecosystem activity, envisioning success. So what is your organization's unique vision of a successful recovery to work ecosystem? So if you go to the next slide here, we share these kind of goals that I had mentioned before around what are you trying to do to set up a continuum of care, to engage and support businesses, to facilitate wraparound support. And then go to the next slide. You can kind of document down for yourself, what are your goals? What does success look like to you? What is a tangible, measurable change that you would like to see in your community? And this is a great start to begin thinking about what you want to see in your community. What can be impactful? We've got other tools to help think about the relevant partners that might be in your community, different types of organizations that you might want to consider reaching out to, helping you think about what your relationship is with them and how central they are to ecosystem building, so that you can really get a strong first set of partners to begin wrapping your arms around this work. We can go back to the slides now, I think. Thank you. Lauren and I are both fans of QR codes. So I took the QR code on here, and I know it's already in the chat. But you can check out the guide for yourself. There's a lot of really, really useful materials in there, and we're always welcoming feedback. If you think something's unclear in there, if you've got resources you think other folks would benefit from, please reach out to me. I'll drop my email address in the chat. And let us know what you think. We want to make sure that this is accessible for folks of all types. We created this with the kind of first idea of having it be useful to a local development district, but it doesn't need to be just for the kind of narrow community that we first began working with. It's made for folks in communities trying to do good work, just like you. And so hopefully this resonates with you, and you can find ways that can benefit what you're trying to do in your communities. With that, I'll pass it back to Shatterproof. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brendan, for your presentation. So I'm going to jump in and pass it over to Kathleen Varda once I introduce her. But Kathleen C. Varda is an innovative thinker with broad-based expertise in strategic planning, grant and fund development, and community relationship building. As a high integrity and energetic leader, she is known for her ability to create successful outcomes in complex situations, including securing over $125 million in federal and foundation grants, major gifts, and contract awards over the past 18 years. Currently, she is the VP of Community Engagement and Development at Highland Rivers Behavioral Health, as well as serves a dual role as the Foundation Director for the Highland Rivers Foundation. Highland Rivers is a $75 million organization that provides services to uninsured and underinsured children, adults, veterans, and families with mental health and substance use and intellectual and developmental disabilities across 13 counties in Northwest Georgia. Mrs. Varda has led several organizations in the development, implementation, and achievement of their strategic initiatives, as well as worked closely with key leadership to transform the culture and transparency of the organization. So I'll pass it over to you, Kathleen.
Well, thank you. And of course, as everyone can tell, a grant writer wrote that bio because it's very wordy and long-winded. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today with everyone and to talk to you a little bit about who Highland Rivers is and our journey as an Inspire grantee. Seeing if I can move the slides. Perfect. So I serve dual roles for Highland Rivers Behavioral Health. So for that first role of VP of Community Engagement and Development, I oversee all of our grant making and strategic planning. And of course, in that introduction, you heard about the population that we serve at Highland Rivers Behavioral Health, but we're really the core behavioral health safety net provider in the 13 counties that we serve in Northwest Georgia. And there's actually 22 community service boards across the state of Georgia, and each of the 159 counties is served by those community service boards. And really the key of who we serve is that uninsured, underinsured population. And we provide a whole array of treatment and recovery supports and services. So anywhere from crisis stabilization to community-based services and all of the services and recovery supports in between. And we really work with partners and helping to develop those ecosystems within our communities to better support those individuals and their families. My other role and the other hat that I wear is being and serving as the foundation director for the Highland Rivers Foundation. And we started that Highland Rivers Foundation because we knew that people coming into our services and trying to access our services, of course, there was several barriers and challenges for them to getting in and being served fully in behavioral health organizations like ourselves. And so using that foundation as a vehicle to break down some of those barriers, and that foundation piece really is going to help us sustain our Recovery to Work initiative that has been funded through the Inspire grant, as well as it's an integral partner in offering scholarships that I'll talk further about in the upcoming slides. So jumping into our journey of becoming an Inspire grantee, we began this quite a long time ago through our CEO, Melanie Dallas, and she served as an advisory council member at the Appalachian Regional Commission. And her role was to help with a whole group of individuals of developing strategies for states on how to really address the economic impact of the opioid crisis that was hitting the Appalachian area. And so from that work, the planning grants became, and now, as Lauren mentioned, is just grown by leaps and bounds over the last several years. And so we were one of the grantees for the planning grant and went through that 12-month process. I know you have 12 to 18 months. And then we are now in our second year of our implementation grant. And one thing that, before going to the fourth bullet, that I must say is that Lauren is really the project officer that sees what everybody is doing and helps us pool our resources and leverages what we do together. So we are part of a multi-state initiative now through a planning grant with the Aspire program. And what Lauren was able to do was she saw that each of us was working, when we were working with our planning and implementation grants, we were all thinking along the same lines of developing a toolkit. Each of us brought unique aspects to that toolkit. And so she brought us together to really help us fulfill and enhance through others' work, the toolkits that we were developing for our own service areas and for our states. And so that innovation that she brought and that leadership really is inspirational. So she's the perfect person to oversee that Inspire initiative. And with that too is going on what Lauren said, another program manager for the ARC in the state of Georgia is Brittany Pittman. She happens to be part of that Northwest Georgia area. So we have worked with her in helping to become a grantee for the Inspire initiative. So again, reaching out to the program managers, letting them know what your thoughts are and what your ideas are really a great way to get you started in this space. And also connecting with us, I would love to have further discussion with anybody that's interested in how we can maybe grow the work that we're already started and launching in the state of Georgia and bringing it to your communities, as well as adding to what we have already been developing. So why did we want to do the Inspire and become an Inspire grantee? Is because as people walk through the doors of Highland Rivers, we serve 21,000 people a year. There are two things that many of them ask for across all the populations we serve. They want stable housing and they want meaningful work. And so the Recovery to Work initiative and building those ecosystems that support people who are in recovery is vital to not only the individual that we're serving and helping them to achieve their goals as they work towards their recovery, but also to impact the well-being of all the communities that we are in. So we call our initiative Highland Rivers Connect. And really there are two target populations that we work with and are concentrating on our Recovery to Work initiative. And building that recovery friendly workplace. First is our employers and businesses. And on the next slide, I'll get into a little bit more of the strategies we're using to connect the employers and businesses, and then working with future and current employees. So we're not only targeting those that are coming back into the workplace, but re-engaging those individuals who may have been out of the workplace for some time. But also there are individuals who are current employees that may be struggling with substance use disorder. And we're hoping that through education and training with those businesses and employers, that instead of firing somebody that has a huge economic impact to that individual business, is helping them to connect to treatment and recovery supports within their organization, whether it's Highland Rivers, whether it's our recovery community organizations that are local. It's really helping them know the space so that those individuals that might have been great employees for 25 years that may now are struggling, is how do you identify those employees and then get them connected before termination is the only option. Our target area initially within our 13 counties is our Whitfield, Murray, so right up against the Tennessee line, and then in Blue Ridge area, which is our Fannin, Gilmer County, and Pickens County, and then Haralson and Polk County. And we really chose those based on need, based on those ecosystems that we were putting together and that support that we were receiving for the communities. That's how we identified, but our goal, of course, is to expand it across our 13 counties, and really with the purpose of Georgia becoming a recovery-friendly workplace state. That is our goal in having that accreditation certification for the state of Georgia. So we're hoping with partnerships here today that we could maybe help galvanize amongst ourselves to push Georgia to become a recovery-friendly workplace state. Our main elements of our recovery-friendly workplace, and you see that sticker of recovery-friendly, is our hope that every business becomes recovery-friendly and has that sticker on their doorways, on their websites, so people who are looking for employment and wanting to find businesses that may have policies and procedures that are friendly for them, so they're able to take time off for treatment, or to go to their AA or NA meeting, or to go see their sponsor, is to help employers through the toolkit address some of the policies, procedures, or processes they have that may impede that or act as a barrier to somebody who wants to come work for them or is currently working for them. And to provide training. So not only in-person training, but online training. Some of the modifications that we've started working on already is Blue Ridge is a very tourist friendly area with restaurants and small businesses. Those businesses, employers don't have a lot of time to come to an 8-hour training in the day, but they are facing a lot of employees that are dying by suicide and dying by overdose. So how do we create trainings and modify the toolkit and how we implement the toolkit so they can still get the benefit and receive those trainings at their own pace or in smaller doses so that they can support the employees, because there is that willingness to do something to support their employees. And so we don't want to close off or make it a challenge or barrier to become a recovery-friendly employer. We also are going to be doing community summits in those 3 regions, and that's bringing employers together to do a little bit more education in a day-long piece, to also provide some training like QPR for suicide prevention, whether it's recovery-friendly language and what is a recovery-friendly model. So helping them better understand the landscape and how their participation in creating this ecosystem that we've talked about throughout this presentation, how do we bring all of those partners together? And then creating a speakers bureau. So that speakers bureau, so people can see and identify people with lived experience that maybe can talk to them about what recovery is, what is the meaning of recovery, how do you speak to somebody that may be struggling, and how you connect them to services. So really giving them the faces of recovery, but also other trainers within our system that can help with some of the concepts that they may be struggling with. And on the peer support piece is we have community liaisons that not only work with the employers, but also people in recovery who connecting them to supports and helping to those employers to find those resources for individuals. We are providing a support services fund through the Inspire grant, so paying for that childcare, transportation, all those barriers to being, for all those barriers that come with maybe not being able to get to work or be successful in your position. And peer scholarships is where our Highland Rivers Foundation comes in. It's helping individuals who may not have certifications to get into some types of employment, or they're at one position and level in their business and they want to grow as an employee. And so helping them go back to school through some tuition reimbursement or getting books or other supports that may allow them to further their career. And then, of course, continue training for them as well as how to achieve a work-life balance so that recovery doesn't become something that's second place to your employment. It still remains important in your life. And then an online support forum so everything will be web-based, but also employers will be able to talk to one another and share success stories, and also be able to ask each other questions. Our toolkit, I'll kind of go through these next slides rather fast because I know we want to give a little time for questions and answers, but it's a 40-page document. We want to share it with everybody. We want to spread Workforce Connect across the state of Georgia. We need our help doing so, but it really goes into what is recovery-friendly workplace, what are some facts and some impacts of those resources. And our toolkit really dives down into recovery timeline. What questions can you ask? What are the 8 dimensions of wellness? What language creates stigma? And also what are some sample policies and forms that they can use to become recovery friendly? And then just as the next few slides are just some examples of what the pages look like. So an impact of becoming a recovery friendly workplace and why it's meaningful to them and what it can do for their business and the economy of their community. We also have the process of how we engage and what their responsibility is as a business or employer that is going into becoming a recovery friendly workplace. And then these are some of the initial components. I don't want to speed through the slide, but we really wanted it to make it easy for the employer to adopt and become a recovery friendly workplace, but we also want them to put in some work as well. So looking at their policies and procedures that may be prohibitive to somebody who's in recovery. And then this is our letter of intent. So every business and employer that wants to be a part of a recovery friendly workplace has to sign a letter of intent. And we actually have a letter that they can send to their whole staff. And we can of course modify this by employee or by business and by employer, but we really wanted them to sign their name and to be engaged. So it's almost like a memorandum of understanding or business agreement that they're going to put in work and time to becoming a recovery friendly workplace. And what's next for us? We're of course going to launch this in targeted areas. We want to continue to enhance and expand what we're doing, and we wanted to for Georgia to adopt and become a recovery friendly workplace state. We want to continue working with our multi-state partners. And most exciting is we're working with a staffing agency that wants to create an additional arm to our staffing organization that focuses on individuals who are in recovery and helping to, Brendan said it before, sometimes there's perceived risks that aren't really there. And so, but helping to hold those people in a safe workplace where they can get more wraparound support, and then transitioning them after 18 to 24 months as a true employee of that organization or business that the agency is working with. And that individual is actually a person in recovery themselves. So it's an exciting piece to have his thoughts and input into what we're doing. And then here is my last slide is just my contact information. I'd love to hear from everybody. And with that, I thank everybody for letting me talk for a little bit about what we are doing as an Inspire grantee.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm going to go ahead and I'll stop sharing our screen, and we'll get all of our panelists highlighted. But we have a few moments for maybe one or two questions. So I will transition there. So our first question, I'll pass it over to you, Brendan and Kathleen specifically, but how can we effectively coordinate efforts between individuals and organizations to support individuals in recovery transitioning back to work?
Well, I'll go first. And I'll try to keep it quick because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. But basically, you need to get people sitting down and talking at a table. And I don't mean to be too trite about it, but it really just comes down to getting people of a variety of backgrounds, a variety of communities, and finding ways that you can translate the different languages that they speak. One of the biggest things that we found when we were doing the Cohort Learning Academy was the idea that, like, I work in public health. I never thought I'd be sitting down with an economic development professional and finding a way to speak the same language. I never thought of myself as an economic development professional, but here we are. We have aligned interests, and it actually makes sense. So I think just having those conversations is very important.
And just to add that highlighting that we're not competing for resources, but looking at a different perspective of that we're leveraging each other's resources to build a community that can help more people. We can do more together than separate.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And then I'll squeeze in one question. This is from our audience, specifically for you, Lauren. And it reads, referring to your resource that you provided in the chat, are there discussions regarding what to do if the employee is struggling with their performance? How does someone handle that?
Yeah, I think that this question is probably best answered by Kathleen, but at least anecdotally, what I've heard from many of our grantees is that, employers are traditionally pretty hesitant to engage in this space exactly for that question, because they don't feel equipped, have the education, resources, policies, et cetera. Really what the crux of this, the answer to that question entails is that employee has or should have, especially as they're working with their recovery community organizations, treatment providers, other recovery entities out there. Those folks who are supporting them should be checking in with them, if not on a daily basis, at least a weekly basis, having some sort of like an employment treatment plan, if you will. So that holds the employee accountable. So if they are struggling, right, if there's a possible return to use, or if they've got, any triggers in the office, whatever it might be, that it's not, the employer can support them in addressing those, but most importantly, it's their community service providers that are the ones that are really helping them day in and day out to maintain that hopefully long-term engagement and continue on the straight and narrow. But Kathleen, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
I would say that that's why we put community liaisons in place, is so that they can provide that ongoing support to employers. But really it is that education piece of what is available in their community and what is their role. And so it is not doing treatment. It's not having the person come in and sit face to face with them. It's really just saying, I'm helping you with some challenges that maybe I see, or you've come to me, and here's some resources in your community that can help you. And then them showing that support too.
Sorry. One other thing I want to add to that is, I mentioned risk, right? And one thing I maybe didn't talk enough about is the reward, the opportunity for businesses, right? This is a great place to find employees who are going to be motivated and are going to provide a lot of value to a business. So you're oftentimes going to get someone that's very, very loyal once they feel a sense of belonging in that workplace, and a sense of gratitude. The other thing is, setting up these types of programs and supports in your business will not just be in service of that person in recovery specifically. It'll help strengthen your business, strengthen your workforce, and also help you recognize that you're supporting the people in your businesses that are in recovery, but also maybe the ones that you don't know are in recovery. And there's going to be folks that you're not aware of right now that might even be good employees, that might be going through challenges, and working through those issues with your workforce at large will help you uncover those people and make them feel comfortable in getting the support that they need to help them stay a productive employee.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your responses. And I know that we are out of time, but I want to thank all of our speakers, Lauren, Brendan, Kathleen, for all of the information that you shared. And thank you so much, Sarita, for being our interpreter today. After this webinar, feel free to complete our survey, tell us how we're doing, what you'd like to see more. But until next month, and again, thank you so much to our speakers. Everyone have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.